What's up guys, welcome to my Subtlety Rogue DPS guide for Legion pre-patch, patch 7.0.3. In this guide I'm going to go over your talents, your spells and abilities, your stat priority, and then your rotation for single target and AoE damage as well as demonstration of those, and then just macros and add-ons that you can use to help you out. Now we'll go ahead and start right away with the talents here. In your first tier, you want Master of Subtlety pretty much all the time. Gives you 10% additional damage when you're stealth and for 6 seconds after breaking stealth. And because of an ability we'll get into a little bit more, Shadowdance, you'll be actually getting this buff more often than you would think. So it's active quite a bit of the time. It's extra 10% damage. Weapon Master gives you a really low chance to hit the target twice every time you use an ability with that ability. It's just not that great right now, so not really worth taking at all. And Gloomblade replaces Backstab, but if you're behind the target, Backstab actually ends up doing more damage unless they have some sort of armor type thing, but even then it just doesn't do much more, so you're kind of losing out when you're using this talent. So just Master Subtlety for your first tier. Now in your next tier, I would default to Subterfuge. It allows your abilities that require stealth to be used up to 3 seconds after stealth is broken, which is really quite nice. And it also increases the duration of your Shadowdance by 2 seconds. And Shadowdance lasts 3 seconds by default, so you're almost doubling the time that you have in it, which is really, really important, which we'll get to in the rotation. Now, Night Stalker's not a bad choice. It doesn't do quite as well, especially once you've got your class trinket, the Bleeding Hollow Toxin Vessel from Archimond. But it doesn't do quite as well, even without. But it is nice. It does give you more on-demand burst passively. So whenever you pop Shadowdance, you just deal more damage, which is really good. But Subterfuge does allow you to squeeze in more of your kind of big stealth ability, which does a lot more damage. So really good choices here. Subterfuge, really good. I would probably recommend this all the time, but you could do Night Stalker if you really wanted to. Your next talents tier, Vigor, if you have your class trinket, again, from Archimond, Vigor goes really nicely with this whole setup, which we'll get into in more detail in just a little bit, with like Premeditation, Master Shadows, and Subterfuge. And it just gives you 50% or 50 more energy, so you have 150 instead of 100, and your energy regen goes up by 10%, so you get your energy back quicker. What this allows you to do is kind of pool more energy, which will help you in your burst periods with Shadowdance, and that is kind of where most of your damage comes from, especially with the class trinket. Now, Deeper Stratagem is actually really close as well. So you could pick whichever one you like. It doesn't synergize with the other talents as much, but it does do quite well, and it gives you up to 6 combo points, and your abilities that take combo points, that spend them, can actually use up to 6 as well, and it just increases your finisher damage by 10%. Now, if you don't have your class trinket, you could definitely go this way, because it's really close and may actually be like equivalent without the class trinket. It's with the class trinket and this kind of setup that Vigor does pull a little bit ahead, but they're both really good. So it's kind of up to you how you want to play and your play style. In your next tier, it's all kind of survivability. I'd recommend Elusiveness or Cheat Death. Typically, Elusiveness, if you're really good at using feint and you're kind of used to it and you like it, but also reduces the damage you take from basically anything by 30% when you use it. And then, of course, you still have the 50% AoE reduction that's baseline for feint. If you don't want to use an active ability, you can use Cheat Death when you are going to die, like you actually take a hit that should kill you. It just brings you to 7% health instead, and then you take 85% less damage for 3 seconds. Now, it does have a cooldown on it, so once it procs, it takes 2 minutes before you can proc it again, but it can be really nice in this unexpected spike damage or something. So both really good. Soothing Darkness, you heal while you're in stealth, and it's not terrible. Because, I mean, you do get to Vanish, you do get to Shadowdance, which gives you all the buffs of stealth, and it's more of a heal than a damage reduction, but I always, for me personally, I prefer damage reduction versus heals, although so they're all decent, and they can all be used quite effectively. If you're kind of new to the class, I would recommend Cheat Death, so you don't have like extra buttons to worry about, or Soothing, or Elusiveness even. So I like these two the most, but they're all decent. At least, and they won't affect your DPS. Now, tier 75 here. Again, this is a non-DPS really tier of talents, So it's all CC, so strike from shadows. When you do your Shadowstrike, it's stun as well. So just an extra stun that you don't have to worry about because it just passively happens. If you happen to be hitting an ad that can be stunned, it will get stunned. And if you're just hitting a boss, then it doesn't do anything. Prayer on the Weak, when you CC a target with Blind, Kidney Shot, Chief Shot, or Sap. So basically, if you CC it at all, they take 10% increased damage from everything that hits hitting them for the duration of the CC. Meaning, the only thing you could do is to really increase the DPS on that target is Kidney Shot or Cheap Shot, just for a stun. But then you're using your combo points or energy and a global cooldown, and it really doesn't increase your damage. Although it can be somewhat useful, I suppose, if your raid's damage is kind of more important. But again, it doesn't really work on bosses. It can work on ads like Infernals on Archimond or something. It could be a decent choice. Just something to keep in mind. It's a good choice as well, Strike from the Shadows. And then Tangle Shadow just adds more of a slow to your Nightblade, which already has a 50% slow, so I find this one probably the least appealing. So Strike from the Shadows or Prayer on the Weak, whatever suits your fancy. Now level 90, you're going to want to default to Premeditation, especially, again, with the class trinket and the talent setup that I have here. It gives your Shadowstrike an additional combo point when you use it. So instead of one, giving you one combo point, it gives you two. It's really nice, really cool. It lets you get more finishers off. You can also use Alacrity. It's not bad. It's quite good, actually. And your finishing moves have a 20% chance per combo point to give you 1% haste for 20 seconds and stacks up to 20 times. Meaning after you get it up to 20 stacks, it's probably going to be there the whole time unless you die or are incapacitated in the fight for a really long time. But most likely it's basically a straight 20% buff after you've ramped it up. It's actually not bad. I do find Premeditation to be a little more consistent. But you can definitely play with these two if you like. And then Enveloping Shadow is just not worth it. It generates combo points every few seconds, and it just doesn't compare to getting extra combo points via Shadowstrike, or having 20% haste, which is kind of a big deal, both of those. So one of these two for sure. And then at level 100, Master of Shadows is really good whenever you enter stealth, so like Vanish, or you activate Shadowdance, which you will be doing a lot. You get 30 energy, and it kind of allows you to not have to pull quite as much energy before you use Shadowdance, because you do get that free 30. And it's really, really nice for that consistent burst. Marked for Death can be useful if there's ads dying all the time that you can use it on. Waves of ads are just ads that will die within a minute, and the faster the better, of course, because it gives you 5 combo points, and if the target that you put this debuff on dies before the 1 minute timer goes, it resets the cooldown, and you can do it again. So it's going to be really good for build up a lot of combo points on a heavy ad fight. So you can use this if you like, although you can also still use Master of Shadows in that situation, but this is usable for sure in those situations. But if nothing's dying, like no ads are dying or present, then this is not worth taking. And then Death from Above is just not quite as good as the other two options right now. It's just another finisher and doesn't do enough to kind of make up for losing the ability to not pull as much energy for your burst, which happens more often than you might imagine. So those are your talents. Now go ahead and look at our spells and abilities as a Subtlety Rogue. And we'll start here with Backstab. Pretty simple, takes 35 energy, does some damage, builds a combo point, gives you 1 combo point per use. And it does more damage if you're behind the target. So try to stay behind the target at all times if possible, so that when you're using this, which you will be, you just do more damage, kind of passively without having to do too much. Then we have a combo point spender, Nightblade. It's a dot, and the more combo points you use, the longer it lasts. It does not do more damage per combo point, it just lasts longer. It's the same proportion if you want to do the math. It's the same proportion though. So the dot doesn't get stronger, it just lasts longer, which means you don't have to worry about it as much. Then we do have Eviscerate, which is kind of your combo point dump. Takes 1 to 5 combo points and some energy, and just does damage. Pretty straightforward. The more combo points you use, the more damage it does. It's pretty simple. Then we do have Shadowstrike. It is a combo point builder as well, and because I am using Premeditation, it gives you 2 combo points rather than 1. But it does require stealth, and it does a lot of damage, like a crap ton of damage. So it's a really, really strong combo point builder. that can be used in stealth. We do have some AoE here with Shuriken Storm. It's 35 energy. Bills 1 combo point per target that you hit in that 10-yard radius around you. Does a little bit of damage, and when you're in Shadowdance, it does 3 times as much damage. So that will be your, and we'll get into this in the rotation a bit, but that will be your AoE burst if you are trying to do that. We got Symbols of Death. Really important buff. It is kind of your number 1 priority, which we'll get into later. And it requires stealth, but it lasts 35 seconds, gives you 20% damage increase, and it's on a 10-second cooldown. So there's really no reason you should ever let this buff drop off, and you do want to keep it up. It's amazing, awesome, and that's that. Then we do, of course, have our cooldowns. Shadowdance, your main cooldown. It's a 1-minute recharge, 3-charge system. And it allows you to use all your stealth abilities and gain any benefits from stealth. For example, if you're using Master of Subtlety, which I recommend, then that counts when you're in Shadowdance, that you get 10% extra damage during it and for 6 seconds after it. And then if you were using Soothing Darkness, for example, then it would count for the heal because you're in stealth while you're in it, and things like that. So, and also makes you do 10% more damage during Shadowdance and for 5 seconds after. So it's kind of your main cooldown. We'll get into how that's used and applied a little bit later. And then we've got a 3-minute cooldown here, Shadow Blades. It just makes your auto attacks do shadow instead of physical damage, and it generates extra combo points when you do build combo points. So it gives you 1 extra one per use. So during this duration, for example, if you use Backstab, you will now generate 2 combo points instead of 1. And if you use Shadowstrike, you will generate 3 instead of 2, if you're using premeditation like I am. And so that's all that does. It helps you generate more quickly your combo points so that you can use your finishers and so on. So it's nice, long cooldown, and it's just kind of something you use as much as you can. As far as utility, we do have Kick for interrupts, of course. For spellcasting, we do have a Kidney Shot, which costs combo points and energy and stuns a target. So you try not to use this because obviously we're then wasting both energy and combo points, which lowers our DPS, but it's there if you really, really need it. And we also do have Cheap Shot, which can only be used in stealth, and stuns the target for 4 seconds and awards a bunch of combo points, but it doesn't do any damage, so we tend not to use this very often. But if you are in Shadowdance and you really, really need to stun something, you could go over and Cheap Shot it, but it is there. Sap, for like trash and stuff, you can sap and CC a target while you're in stealth, and it breaks on damage and such. It's somewhat useful, but you won't be using it too often. Now Blind, 2-minute cooldown. It's got a little range on it to CC, and breaks on damage, and it just disorients the enemy for a little bit. Now we also have Cloak of Shadows, and this removes all your magical debuffs that are on you and makes you immune to them for 5 seconds. And it's really, really useful if there's any magic debuffs or magic damage coming, you can immune yourself to that damage. It's really quite nice. We do have Feints, which I mentioned in the talent section. You can spam it as much as you like. It reduces the amount of area effect damage that you take by 50%, and if you talent into Elusiveness, it also reduces the damage of anything else by 30% that you take. So it's really, really a nice cooldown, especially if you know when and how to use it. We do have Vanish, which is kind of can be a DPS increase and is more utility as well. It's a 2-minute cooldown, allows you to stealth in combat, puts you into stealth, and then it just allows you to use stuff like Symbols of Death or your Shadowstrike and things like that. If you have your 4-piece or your 2 and 4-piece from Hellfire Citadel, this also allows you to it lowers the cooldown of your Vanish, so you can use it more often, and it will also fill up your combo points in that if you have that tier set. So just kind of be aware of that when you do Vanish, you will get full combo points. We do have a heal now, Crimson Vial, baseline heal. Costs some energy, and it heals you for 30% of your health over 6 seconds, so it's kind of nice to have on a short half-minute cooldown. Then we've got Stealth, of course, just to get you in stealth, but you can't use it in combat, so just before the fight you would use this. And then we have Evasion if you need it for like tanking a boss or an ad or something. Makes you dodge all their physical attacks for 10 seconds. 2-minute cooldown, quite nice. And then we've got our movement abilities. Sprint, 1-minute cooldown makes you, zoom really fast and zip around. And we've got Shadow Step, which teleports you behind the target. and can be really useful in terms of getting from one place to another very quickly. Then we do have Tricks of the Trade. You redirect all your threat to like a tank or something, and then you just help them build their threat at the beginning. Typically, at the start of the fight, you use it on tank, and that's pretty much all you would do, but you don't really have to worry about that too much. Now, we do have some passives that are really important to keep in mind. So first is Deepening Shadows. When you use finishing moves, for every combo point you spend, it reduces the cooldown on Shadowdance by 3 seconds per combo point. Meaning if you use a full 5 combo points, that's 15 seconds off the 1 minute cooldown. So Shadowdance actually comes up a lot, like all the time. It will become one of your mainstays in your rotation. Relentless Strikes, also very, very important. When you use your finishing moves, for every combo point you have a 20% chance to generate 40 energy. Meaning if you do a full 5 combo point, say Eviscerate, you will actually guaranteed get 40 energy back. With a slight increase on energy, and it's really, really nice to have that. So you do just keep that in mind that you will get extra energy when you do. There's a chance to get it when you use your finishing moves. With 5 combo points or more, it's guaranteed. And then Shadow Techniques, your auto attacks do have a possibility of generating combo points, so just keep that in mind. That's why you try not to stay capped at 5 combo points too long, unless you're saving them specifically for burst in very, very short time. Like, oh hey, there's Gorfian's about to, hit his Feast of Souls phase. I want to pull up a little bit of, combo points. So I can just start with the big finisher or something. But generally, you try not to let it sit there too long. Now, as a short mention here, you do want to have 2 ability bars, because you have your out of stealth ability bar, and then when you go into stealth, it changes it. I don't know if there's any add-ons that like change that bar changes, but by default, with like Bartender here, or just with the default UI, you will switch your action bars, so kind of keep that in mind and make sure you are ready set up with both of those before you go into a fight. So let's go ahead and now look at our stats as a Subtlety Rogue. Your stats will kind of depend on if you have the class trinket or not. If you have the class trinket, the Bleeding Hollow Toxin Vessel from Archimond, then it's going to go Versatility will be your best stat, followed by Critical Strike, then Mastery, and then Haste. Now, Versatility and Crit are pretty self-explanatory. Versatility just increases your damage output by a flat amount, and Critical Strike allows you to have a higher chance of critical striking the enemy, doing twice as much damage with your abilities. And then Mastery increases the damage of your finishing move, so anything that takes combo points, that spends combo points, is buffed by your Mastery. And then Haste just makes you attack faster and regen your energy a bit quicker. Now, if you don't have your class trinket from Archimond, Mastery will be your best stat, followed then by Versatility and Crit and Haste. And the reason is, when you get your class trinket, the value of Shadowstrike becomes a lot higher than the value of your finishers. Most of your damage is now coming from your Shadowstrike rather than your finishers, because it buffs it so much. And that's why Mastery kind of loses value when you get your class trinket. Now, they're all very close, the top 3 stats, all very close in value, so you're not going to go super wrong like going with one or the other. So just know that Versatility, Crit, and Mastery are all quite close in value, and then Haste is definitely like bringing up the rear there. But just to kind of recap, if you have your class trinket, Versatility, Crit, Mastery, then Haste. If you do not have your class trinket, then Mastery, Versatility, Crit, and then Haste. And as a mini mention here, it's not really stat priority, but if you do have your 4-piece, again, it does let you use Vanish more often, and also fills up your combo points when you do use it, so just keep that in mind. Alright, now let's go ahead and get into your rotation, and your single target and AoE rotations are very similar, with the exception of one skill, Shuriken Storm, that you're going to be substituting in AoE, and I'll get to that and how that works in just a little bit. So for single target, you're going to want to always keep up your Symbols of Death buff. This is so important. It's 20% extra damage, really, really important, very simple to keep up. Just costs energy, and you just have to be stealthed or in Shadowdance. So keep this buff up always. And then after that, use your Shadow Blaze cooldown when it's up, just on cooldown, as much as possible. And then pretty much just build up combo points with either Backstab if you're not in Shadowdance, or Shadowstrike if you are. And then put your Nightblade, put that up with your combo points, and then after that's already active, then you can just dump those combo points with Eviscerate. And that's essentially how your single target rotation goes. Now, as far as Shadowdance is concerned, you use it, and then it allows you to use Shadowstrike because it's a stealth ability. It just hits like a truck, especially with your class trinket. Now, if you have your class trinket, your burst rotation is just pop Shadowdance, and then spam Shadowstrike, and that's it until you can't do it anymore. Even if you cap your combo points, which you will if you do that, that's fine if you have the class trinket. Now, if you don't have the class trinket, then you don't want to cap your combo points. You want to instead use them. So, a couple Shadow Strikes, Eviscerate, and then more Shadow Strikes. As many as possible. But you do want to fit in as many as you can during your Shadowdance burst window. So that's the essence of your single target rotation. Just keep your buff up, build combo points, or use your cooldown if you need it. So buff, 3-minute cooldown if it's there. Otherwise, build combo points, keep dot up from Nightblade, and then build combo points and use it on Eviscerate. Then what you use to build your combo points just changes whether you're in Shadowdance or if you're not in Shadowdance. Now, one thing to note is you don't want to ever cap your energy. You don't want to be full on energy because then you're wasting your any energy that you were trying to regen but you can't because you're full. And generally, don't try to try not to cap your combo points either. However, if it's like a couple seconds out for example, like Gorfian's Feast of Souls, it might be worth saving a 5-point Eviscerate until he gets that damage buff where you can hit him for twice as much damage. And so, you can do that, but don't hold it too long because don't forget that your auto attacks can generate combo points thanks to your passive. So you may end up wasting a combo point, which really sucks. So that's your single target rotation. And your AoE, all you do is you basically substitute your combo point generator. So Backstab, you put in Shuriken Storm instead, as long as there's at least 2 targets. Now, you'll notice that at 2 targets, Shuriken Storm is going to do less damage than Backstab, but it will give you an extra combo point because there's 2 targets. And so that lets you use finishers more often, which actually increases your AoE, your single target damage from using an AoE ability. So basically at 2 or more targets, you just use Shuriken Storm instead of Backstab. You don't have to change your talents or anything. It's pretty cool. And then if you want to AoE burst, if you think that's really important at some point, maybe phase 2 on Archimonde or something, or Shadowlord Iskar, you can use Shuriken Storm during Shadowdance as well, rather than Shadowstrike. Now this won't really buff your damage overall until you hit 4 to 5 plus targets. Even with the triple damage, it doesn't do, Shadowstrike hits like a truck, especially with your class trinket. So it still might be worth using Shadowstrike in that situation during Shadowdance, because you have priority targets you're killing, in that example on Iskar. But you can, if you really just want to do AoE burst, you can do Shuriken Storm during Shadowdance, but especially with the class trinket, it's pretty much never going to do more damage, and even without, it takes many targets before Shuriken Storm really actually gains damage value over Shadowstrike. Now, one thing that you will note, though, is that you can spend those combo points in big area situations, because if you're hitting 4 to 5, that's 4 to 5 combo points you get every Shuriken Storm. So you can get more finishers, but if you have the class trinket, then Shadowstrike does so much damage. So it's kind of up to you. It's not really a set if you're AoEing, you have to use it during burst and during just to generate points, but it's definitely an option you can do if you really want to do AoE burst rather than just single target. So those are your 2 rotations. The key here is it's not really a set in stone kind of rotation, even as far as priority systems go. Your Shadowdance, you want to use it, often. You don't want to not use it. And obviously if it's at 3 charges, you definitely want to use it because you don't want to waste it. You don't want to waste that recharge time. But even at 2 charges, you can use it, if you want to. But you also want to consider when you want to use it. If there's a period of burst coming up that you need to kind of save it up for, things like that. And when you do want to use Shadowdance, make sure you're pooling energy. So about 100 energy is a good standard if you are getting ready to go really hard. 100 energy, not too much more, because remember you do get 30 energy from using Shadowdance with your last talent here, your Master of Shadows. But you want to pull that much so that especially if you have to get Symbols of Death back up. You can do that and then Shadowstrike as much as possible. You don't have much time once you pop Shadowdance. You have 5 seconds if you're using Subterfuge, and even less time if you're not using it. So really important to pull up your energy. Don't waste it. Don't cap it. Same with combo points in general, although you can wait a little bit if there's a period of damage that you know you'll have. And that's pretty much all there is. You kind of have to get a feel for when you need to use Shadow Dance, when you can get away with it, etc. And then Vanish is another thing you can use to kind of reset your Symbols of Death buff, or if you don't want to use Shadow Dance but you want to get that buff up and maybe like a couple Shadow Strikes in. So it kind of becomes a lot of intuition and getting used to like the feel and flow of it and how you think you should be using abilities. So it's not quite as set in stone as some of the other classes. So I'll go ahead and show you guys on these dummies how this goes. And I'll start with the single target, and then I'll just kind of show you later on, like you would just switch out, Shuriken Storm. And, so you can kind of see how that all goes. So we'll start in the opener, start stealth, of course. Get your symbols up, Shadow Strike. Now, if you're using Subterfuge, you can actually get a couple Shadow Strikes and then put them on dot and then go really hard with all your cooldowns. If you don't, then you only get one Shadow Strike because you break stealth and you can't use anything without Subterfuge. So then you'll just pop your Shadow Blades, build up combo points, or get Nightblade up and then burst with Shadow Dance. So I'll show you guys with Subterfuge. Just remember, if you can't Shadow Strike anymore, then just follow the rest of the rotation after and start your burst right away. So I'll start with Symbols of Death, Shadow Strike, get that dot up, pop your 2 minutes, pop your 1 minute, and just spam Shadow Strike. Now I'm using Eviscerate because I don't have the Class Trinket, but if you do, you would just be spending it, just spend the whole time Shadow Striking, forget the combo points, until you get out of Shadow Dance. Now you notice I'm already back up to almost full Shadow Dance charges, so I'll go ahead and pull energy, spend it, or pop it, and just spam Shadow Strike, get rid of the combo points, because again, no Class Trinket, but if you did, you wouldn't have to put dot up. And now say, okay, let's pretend I'm low on energy, right, but I have this buff coming off really soon. I'll Vanish, pop that up, and then just get a couple of hits in, just to make sure I don't lose that buff, because that's really important. And that's what you can kind of use Vanish for if you don't have enough energy and you want to get that just the buff up. Now here I pulled some energy, so I'll Shadow Dance. I Symbols of Death out of habit, but you would just Shadow Strike spam, and then dump combo points if you don't have Class Trinket. And that's pretty much the rotation. Now every time you put on you spend combo points, you reduce the cooldown on Shadow Dance, so you can use it quite often, just don't starve yourself out of it. Now I'll pull up some energy. I don't really need the symbols back up, so I'll just spam a lot of Shadow Strikes as much as possible. And then I should have put a dot up there, I accidentally hit Eviscerate. But make sure you have your dot rolling as much as possible. I'll try to get that up here. Pull a little energy so I can use Shadow Dance pretty soon. And I will need to refresh my my Symbols of Death here. So Symbols of Death, Shadow Strike a couple times, Eviscerate, and a couple of Shadow Strikes. Again, just beating a dead horse here, but if you had Class Trinket, you would just spam Shadow Strike in your Shadow Dance. I'll do it again. Shadow Dance because it comes up so often, and just spam as many as you can get, at least 4 if possible, more if you can fit them in. And so that's your single target. Now I'll go ahead and use AoE. So instead of backstabbing here, now for AoE you just Shuriken Storm. And you see it built up a lot of combo points because there's 3 targets right now. Now I'll pull up and I'll use the burst rotation with Shadow Storm or with Shuriken Storm as well. And it's pretty much the same thing. You just spam it, and then if you need to, you can dump combo points. It doesn't really change much from the single target version when you're doing burst. Now again, if you're doing AoE but you just want to burst a target, you can, of course. He'll put the dot on. We could Shadow Dance and still Shadow Spike, or Shadow Strike, and dump combo points. And then once it's over, okay, well now we can Shuriken Storm again instead of backstabbing. That's kind of how it would look if you're trying to still do single target burst, but you also have it's a little bit of AoE cleave outside of it. So those are your rotations, kind of how it goes. How you use and when you use Shadow Dance is something you just have to get a feel for, really, and kind of line it up with any burst that you need to have, of course. Like Gorefiend, Feast of Souls, or a priority ad comes out, again, maybe on Gorefiend, or like on Archimon with the Infernals, for example, or Gorefiend with the big Hulk guy. Really important. Could be really, really important to use have Shadow Dance ready for that. And just remember to pull up your resources before you go bursting. Now, that's it for your rotations. Now, as far as macros and add-ons, I don't really use any macros. I don't suggest macroing Symbols of Death in with anything because you don't always want to use it, and it does take energy, which can kind of screw you if you use it every time you can. As far as add-ons, I do have Weak Ores to track some stuff. I'm tracking Nightblade, and the Nightblade timer, that's your dot that you put on, and then your Symbols of Death buff, and its timer, so I just know when it's coming off. You could also track things like cooldowns, like is my Shadowdance coming up, with stacks and, how many stacks are coming and how many do I have, or like Shadow Blades, stuff like that. Just all things you can do, which would be pretty cool and can help you out. So that's it for this video. If you guys liked it, feel free to hit with the like, leave a comment, ask any questions, let me know what you thought. And if you want to see more videos like this in the future, feel free to press the subscribe button, and you'll see when I post new videos. Thank you guys for watching. Cheers.